So apparently we got a new Carmen Sandiego game that's supposed to be coming out sometime in the first quarter of 2025, and it's something that caught a lot of people by surprise because it seems like the last time Carmen Sandiego's truly been like relevant was like back in the 90s. And even though we got that, Netflix animated series from like 2019 to 2021, a lot of people know Carmen Sandiego from the 80s and like the early 90s. And when they think about like video games in relation to Carmen Sandiego, they think about the game that came out for the older like PC models like DOS and Apple II and all that stuff. And back then, it had a different developer. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but it was mainly like an educational strategy type game. Um, and it's something that made it really unique because I remember when the very first Carmen Sandiego game came out back in like '85, it was still something people played back in like the early '90s or something you would see in like classrooms back during that time. I can like I can vividly remember Carmen Sandiego back in the day, and when I was younger, I wasn't sure whether or not she was a villain or an anti-hero or what have you. Some people would classify her as both, considering on how they view her or how they like view the character. But I feel like Carmen Sandiego is a character that has developed a cult following over time, and the fact that her name turns heads, and her name is something that basically trends on social media whenever it's mentioned, or whenever there's like a project involving her involved. I think it's something that's kind of like it speaks volumes in um, terms of like what kind of impact she kind of had, back in the day when she was like relevant, during the 80s and 90s. And you look at this game, I mean, that's supposed to be coming up. Pretty much this upcoming game is really different from like the older game, because in the older game you were hunting her down because like she's a criminal and you had to chase her and whatever. But in this particular game, you're actually playing as Carmen Sandiego, and I feel like that's something that should have been the thing back in the day, but the 80s and the 90s were different. And and there's another character that you've seen, in the start of the trailer, and that character is supposed to be the player from the Netflix series, and pretty much the player is like Carmen's sidekick in this upcoming video game, and I feel like it's an interesting twist from what we've seen in, I guess, the older Carmen Sandiego video games and with the animated series, because it has like the aesthetics of Netflix animated series, but at the same time, the gameplay is similar to that of the older Carmen Sandiego games. And this is supposed to be like more of a single player puzzle adventure game opposed to, I guess, an educational strategy type of game. And the campaign mode's supposed to be more story driven, and I think there are supposed to be classic modes available in the Carmen Sandiego game as well. And I guess the main objective of the game is to use high tech gadgets to basically engage in espionage in order to defeat the evil Vile, who is like the main antagonist of the game. And based on what we know, Carmen Sandiego's new game is supposed to be on Netflix, Steam, PlayStation 5. Or PlayStation 4, one of those two. It's supposed to be on Xbox, supposed to be on Nintendo Switch. Um, it didn't really specify whether or not it's going to be on Xbox One or Xbox Series X, because things get really iffy with last generation and current generation game systems. And at this point, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One is like more than a decade old, so it would make more sense to have it for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And and obviously, this game is probably not going to come to the Switch too, since it's coming on the Nintendo Switch sometime next year. And that's another thing. The official release date for the new Carmen Sandiego game has not been revealed just yet. We do know that it's a joint creation by the gaming developers Game Loaf and HarperCollins Production, and we do know that like there's supposed to be like a live action Carmen Sandiego movie that's like in the works, and I think that's something that's expected to be released sometime in 2025 also. And the thing is, there hasn't been an official release date for that just yet either, but it does seem like Carmen Sandiego is making a comeback, and her popularity is starting to um, is having a resurgence to say the least. And I feel like 2025 is going to be a big year for Carmen Sandiego overall, and I do feel that this whole idea is playing as, I guess, the character that was like seen as the main villain of her own series is the main protagonist. And how is that going to be something that, appeals to casuals? Because, I feel like Carmen Sandiego would be more popular nowadays opposed to how popular she was back in the day, only because we live in a day and age that glorifies, anti-heroes and villains and all that stuff, while the 80s and 90s is all about, heroes taking down the bad guys and all that. So who knows? I feel like Carmen Sandiego might be more popular in this day and age than she was back in the day. And I also feel like, back in the day, Carmen Sandiego wasn't necessarily, she wasn't like, heavily, marketed or promoted in a way where she was presented in an appealing light to, the American audience of gamers in general. And of course, we didn't get too many like Carmen Sandiego games back in the day. And the only thing people remember in relation to Carmen Sandiego was that that one video game from 1985 that got multiple ports over time. I think at one point the original San Diego game was ported to Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, but that's something that I didn't know about. And a lot of other people didn't know about because there were so many options in relation to video games and all that stuff. But the thing is, Carmen Sandiego is a name that a lot of people are familiar with, even if you're not a fan of the series or you never like really like paid attention to like some of the older games or novels or books or any of that stuff. People still know who she is, and I do feel that with the name value that she has, she can definitely appeal to casuals in 2025, especially considering on what the potential outcome of the 2024 election might end up being. Because you think about it, Carmen Sandiego is basically supposed to be like this criminal who commits espionage and all that stuff, and that's something that something people might become fond of, depending on who wins the election and all that stuff. But at the same time, I don't know. Like I feel like it's going to be a big deal for the most part because you look at Grand Theft Auto 6. Okay, the main character of that game is pretty much a Latina. You know what I mean? And here we have another Latin born Latina female protagonist and who's also like an antagonist or whatever. And that's something that I feel will like add to, I guess, maybe the depth to the game to some extent because it's something that's different. It's something you don't see too often in video games nowadays. And like for the most part, I do feel that, Carmen Sandiego has the potential to have more success than a lot of people would expect from a IP that's been kind of irrelevant for years for the most part.